Alright guys, so let's get right into this. Medical terminology. We're going to be looking at thousands of words, and it'd be easier if we know about some of these words before nursing school. Okay, so let's talk about the root word first. Okay, the root word is the foundational unit of the medical term. It's the foundation, the basics, basis. So the root word is always going to be in the word. Okay, now in the first part of the root word, sometimes, not always, you have a prefix. Okay, and the prefix is going to tell you where. It's going to tell you more than that, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, now at the end of a root word, not always, but sometimes you have a suffix. Okay, now if you think of a suffix, think of how, but it will be more than that. Okay, how and where. I'm being very elementary, very simple right now, because we're going to build on knowledge. Okay, so remember this too. There's always a root word, but there's not always a prefix, and there's not always a suffix. Let's look at the word appendectomy. Okay, appendectomy. Now, we don't know what these words mean right now, but we're going to learn. We're building on knowledge. This is an appendix. Okay, now you want to take a guess at what that word means before we move on. This means the surgical removal of. Okay, notice that this word has a root word, which is append, and a suffix, which means ectomy. The surgical removal of an appendix. And you're going to notice, not in all words, but the ones that I've learned so far, when you see a word, I always start with the suffix, and then I move to the prefix if it has one, and then the root word. And I'll give you an example in just a minute to where it has both a prefix, a root word, and a suffix. Alright guys, now we need to talk about combining vowels. Now we know our vowels are A, E, I, O, and U. But for the purpose of just simply building on knowledge right now, most medical terms, you're going to see the O. So we're going to focus on the O right now. Now why do we have combining vowels? In the last word, we saw a root word and a suffix. Now think about this. Sometimes that can be 10 to 15 letters, and we can get tongue-tied. So in my basic understanding, a combining vowel, if you put an O in between the root word and the suffix, it kind of gives your mouth a break, or your tongue a break, and it makes it easier to roll off the tongue. So if a nurse or two doctors or two people in the medical field are conversing. Okay, so that's all it is. An O combining vowel can also go between the prefix and the root word. Alright, let's talk about something that never could happen. You're never going to see a prefix and a suffix together, and you're doubly not going to see a combining vowel between a prefix and a suffix. The root word is always in the middle. Okay? Alright guys, here we go with an example. Hematology. Okay? Hemat is the root word, the O is the combining vowel, and ology is the suffix. Okay, so the study of blood. You see how I did that? I took the suffix first. I know the suffix is on the end, but you've got to remember, go to the end first. What is it? It's the study of blood. And the reason we put an O in there, guys, is simply this. Hematology. I know it sounds like the T is on the end, okay, but the O kind of, think about it as this, that we want this to flow off our tongue so people can understand us. Hematology. So we got the O in there. If you take the O out, that would be very hard to pronounce. Guys, so we're going to wrap this video up, and we've talked about prefixes, which is the beginning of some words. Remember, all root words do not have prefixes. We talked about the root word being the foundational medical term, and that's what we're learning, medical terminology. We talked about combining vowels, and most of them start with an O. We did not talk about a combining form, but that's just the root word plus the vowel. We'll get into that more later. We talked about the suffix, the end of some words. Okay, remember, all root words don't have to have suffixes. So guys, let's just put a word up here, and let's look at it. Endocarditis. Okay, now we'll figure out the term, the meanings of these words later in future videos. But let's just pick this out. Okay, card, that is the heart. Itis, inflammation. And endo, meaning the inside. Now, I don't know if this is always true, but I have started to pick up on something. And as we learn this, we pick up on little things, little hints and tricks and little tidbits. I've noticed that when I read a word, I always start out with suffix. The inflammation of the inside of the heart. So it seems to me, so far in my training, I go suffix, prefix, root word. I don't know if that's always true, but the inflammation of the inside of the heart. And guys, we'll look at that later. Thanks for watching.